Employee Talks.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining this panel discussion. I've brought together an illustrious group of our partners today to discuss the hot off the press news that is Teams Extensibility. So we've gathered Chris from Symity, Zach from Loopup, and Harkirat from Resonate here today. Before we jump into Teams Extensibility, do you want to just give yourselves a quick introduction? Chris, you're at the top of my screen, so I'll hand over to you first.
Yeah, okay. Cheers, Ollie. Yeah, thanks for inviting me along. It's good to be on the call with Zach and H. So Chris Goodwill, I work for a partner called Symity in the UK, and we're a Microsoft Teams-centric partner. So very commonly doing phone system, either UK, EMEA, global, and very focused on Microsoft certified and native contact centers. I'm a partner manager, and I'm also a subject matter expert. I'm not deploying the products, but I have a lot of knowledge around that space.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. Zach?
Yeah, hi, everyone. I'm Zach Bennet, Microsoft Teams MVP and Principal Architect at Loopup. Loopup are Operator Connect and Direct Routing as a Service provider. So we concentrate on getting you to the PSTN and using our extensive country coverage to help you do that.
Thanks, Zach. H?
Yeah, so I'm Harkirat Degun. I'm Product Director at Resonate. So Resonate, like Symity, helps customers move to Microsoft Teams so we can provide the full stack, whether it's voice, meeting rooms, professional services, managed services. But yeah, we are selling contact centers, Loopup being one of them, and excited about the announcements and to discuss it with Chris, Zach, and yourself today.
Great. Thanks, H. So maybe just before we dive in, I'll set the scene a little bit as to why we're having this conversation now. So if you were living under a rock last week in the Teams space, you might not have heard, but it was fairly plastered all over LinkedIn. Microsoft did a good job, as always, of making that very public. But they announced a new technology stack, I suppose you could call it, which they're calling Teams Extensibility. So Teams Extensibility, I think, can mean a few different things to a few different vendors. So we'll hopefully try and clarify that today. But I think essentially it means that organizations and ISVs like Loopup are now able to use Azure Communication Services to connect into their Teams numbers. I think that's what it means at a high level. So Azure Communication Services, as we'll jump into, is an exciting kind of software development kit that Microsoft have been building up now for a few years, and it essentially means that vendors and software developers like us can now leverage that much more extensively in the context of Teams Phone. So before we dive into the depths of that too much, maybe it'd be good to start by having a look at what's got us to this point. So I don't know, can one of you give us a bit of a summary as to Teams CCaaS solutions and integrations up to this point, and perhaps where we're heading in the future? Zach, I see you're nodding, so I'll pick on you and to take that question first.
Yeah, I could jump into that one. So as CCaaS offerings, Microsoft have a certification program, and there's 3 buckets right now. I say right now because we never know what's coming in the future. But we have the Connect model. And this Connect model was, you'll see that's got the biggest offering of providers right now. Effectively, for that, what you're going to need is a session border controller that's certified for this. And you will use direct routing to reach up to that Teams phone infrastructure to be able to create those, the contact center itself. One thing with this is there's seen tromboning of calls. So the calls have to come into an SBC, then up to Teams, and then back to that SBC in order to, have the providers to be able to manipulate that call themselves. Some pros and cons for that. One big pro is you have a big control of what you can actually do with that call. Con being that there's a couple of extra hops that potentially need to happen. Also, with the Connect model, there is an optional use of, the Teams Graphs APIs and those cloud communication APIs that integrate with Teams. So you can use them, or providers that use the Connect model can use them as and when they see fit. The next iteration on that is the Extend model. This one that I'm very familiar with. We work quite closely with Lua on your Nimbus product at the minute, which is an Extend model. And with this particular model, you're effectively, all the call control is happening natively within Teams using those Teams callings APIs. Okay, so your endpoints for this are primarily in Teams. Okay, so you're using those Graphs APIs, and that Extend contact center is living inside of the Office 365 ecosystem completely as well. And then we kind of move on to the future, and this is what we're kind of going to be talking about today, and that's the Power model. For the longest time, I've looked at that Microsoft Learn page and it says coming soon, and it's been coming soon for so long. And, we've had vendors that have said, we're a Power contact center, but now we can say definitively, we know who and who isn't a Power contact center. And it's going to be, these Teams Phone Extensibility and these ISVs that are using these ACS services, and effectively what Power is going to give. And I don't want to jump it too much right now, but it's built with those SDKs directly from Microsoft. So I saw a good post somewhere, and it was one app, one screen contact center. So it's all going to be available in one.
I think you've nailed it there, Zach. I just want to pick up on that last point, and I was smiling. I think H was as well. Is, we've all worked in this space for a long time. That certification page, oh my goodness, like, was it ever going to change? Yep. And it's been, I was trying to think, like, how long has that been there? And it's a long time. It's definitely 4 years.
4 or 5 years,
yeah. And it's great to see. I think, the like you said, Ollie, the announcement just absolutely created a mass tidal wave, I think, for all of us. So we've been waiting. And it's great to see that Lua are one of the launch partners for it. So, but just a real small point. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. You all know that. I think a lot of other people know that. Maybe a bit too much. But that post that I pushed within 12 hours was the highest performing post of the last year. 25,000 impressions. So this is a great topic to talk about today.
Great. Thanks very much. Just before we dive into Azure Communication Services, I think on the Connect Extend piece, just from experience of working with vendors and with both models there, I don't know if any of you have anything to add around working with vendors using the Connect model or working with the Extend model before we move on to the Power model in too much detail.
One thing I will say is Loopup, when we went out looking for a contact center partner, we started with a Connect model provider. But as soon as we saw how quick and how easy you can stand up services with the Extend model, and that's what Nimbus showed us with Lua, that was one thing that really made us kind of think twice and say, maybe we should look a little bit more into this Extend model. The fact that you can, because we're deploying Operator Connect and, these things that don't take, months and months to deploy. If you want like a proof of concept or you want to get something running quickly, that Extend model of us just being able to say, here you go, Lua, here's some numbers into Teams, let's go through and throw together a call flow. It's the running start that you can get with an Extend model over a Connect model, I think is really powerful.
Yeah, agree. And I think just building onto that, there is certainly some pros and cons of each. I think where we see the Connect model in our customers is where they want contact centers that are still connected with Teams, but primarily sit as their own tower within the business, but may need an occasional, transfer into a Teams department or something like that. So there's a space for them. But yeah, the Extend certainly gets you off the ground super quick, and yeah, you guys we've seen the videos of how fast are you now getting a service up and running,
I
Ollie?
think it was 23 minutes. I think is still the world record. If any of you fancy trying to beat that at any point, you're welcome to have a crack.
I think I just wanted to say, like, Zach and H have covered that all really well. I think for us as a partner, similarly, is, you know, and historically for the team at Symity, then we worked initially with that Connect model and still work with it, you know, with vendors. And the Extend model, I think, for those partners for those ISVs, sorry, like Luware, who started on that journey and adopted, you know, the Extend model in terms of a build from scratch of a new platform, then I think we always had one eye on, well, the power's coming. So we wanted to work with Luware just because we knew they had a vision for the future as well, rather than kind of resting on their laurels and just thinking, well, we've got an existing platform and, you know, that's fine, some development on it, but things always change. You know, we know that, and like Zach said, you know, there'll be another change as well in the future. So having a partner like Luware who are looking at the future, I think supports and helps partners, and ultimately that means that for customers, you know, we can help them in terms of understanding how things might potentially change for their strategy. You know, if they tie themselves into, or commit rather, to like a 2 or 3 year strategy in CCaaS, which can be quite commonplace, they've still got to be mindful that things will change, and we've got to be mindful. You know, it's not something that will sit there for 10 years anymore. So yeah, it's interesting times.
No, absolutely. And talking about the change, I think for us, the biggest technology stack that this extensibility opens up is the Azure Communication Services. So as Zach mentioned, with Extend, we're primarily using the Graph API to manage the Teams call when it's in the customer's tenant, which is the free API that Microsoft gave vendors probably back in 2019. I think they first released that for us to manipulate and control Teams calls. With extensibility, essentially means that we can use the voice stream within Azure Communication Services as a certified model to connect to Teams. So for those that aren't so familiar, and there'll probably be a lot out there that have maybe heard of Azure Communication Services but don't know in detail kind of what it's there to provide. Maybe H, can you give us a bit of background into what Azure Communication Services is?
Sure. So Azure Communication Services at the highest level is a communications platform as a service. And essentially what that is a toolkit to enable you to add communication capability into any of the apps that you may build, or even workflows as well. So some of the things that you can do is like text messages, emails, there's WhatsApp integration coming soon, phone calls and video, real-time chat, virtual appointments. Those are the types of capabilities that you've got in the platform. They may sound familiar because a lot of those are in Teams, and that's because Teams is utilizing the Azure Communication Services platform. But what this does is open up all of that capabilities to ISVs like Luware to be able to provide that capability within their apps. I think you mentioned some of these in some of the content that you've put out, but what it enables you to then do is also access things like AI, which is one of the main drivers or buzzwords that we're hearing in the industry at the moment. So yeah, traditionally use cases, you know, patients meeting doctors, maybe online chat with support, you know, the text message reminders that you get. Those are the kinds of things that become really simple and straightforward. You don't need to build those things from scratch. And from a model in terms of how much you pay, it's all consumption based as well. Probably one thing to add is that they also support bring your own carrier through direct routing. So it's a very similar setup to what you set up in the Teams world in terms of connecting your telephony. So it's a big step forward, I think, in the way that you'll be able to handle calls and communications with customers.
Yeah,
I think.
I think.
Sorry, go on,
sorry.
Ollie. No, you go,
I
mate.
was just going to say, I think for a long time we've been looking at that set of APIs, thinking there's some really cool stuff in there, and we have even built solutions using that. So, for example, Interact is our video routing solution. Our web chat routing solution is built on Azure Communication Services. But until this moment, the Microsoft certified ACS as a voice channel, we weren't going to run our voice calls or our 10 million voice calls a month over an uncertified channel. So now that Microsoft have made this kind of announcement and making this a certified model to run voice, it means that we can use all of those really cool tools in our full voice contact center. And I think especially AI there is going to be a big piece, as you mentioned, H. So did you have something to add there before I cut you off?
The only thing I was going to say was not to sound very punny, but it's really bringing power to ISVs of what they're actually going to be able to build. And one of the things is having those calls being answered in Teams as the endpoint, or if you want to now feed that into like a CRM system and have those calls answered somewhere else, but there still be Teams calls on the back end, or coming through that ICS service. I think that's going to open up a lot of things for providers.
Yeah, I think Microsoft are calling that dual persona. So
dual persona.
It is extensibility for Teams Phone, but actually a bit ironically, it means that providers like us can build an endpoint outside of Teams. So, for example, we can build our attendant console to be able to handle calls directly in the attendant console without handling that call in Teams first. In the future, we'll be able to build a widget that sits in a CRM. So if a contact is living in Salesforce, they'll be able to handle that whole call in the CRM, but then transfer it to a Teams user. So it gives that choice of flexibility for the end user to decide which app they're handling it in, which I think is really nice. I'm not sure about the dual persona name, but hey, that's not my bag.
I think the challenge for all of us really is, and hopefully this session is going to help, is to try and distill it, isn't it, for the marketplace? And we're all relatively technical on this call as well as being commercial, but what does it mean for end customers? That's really what we need to get across. The buzzword bingo and technical jargon, like we'll lap up, always like a new acronym or something coming out of Microsoft. But yeah, what does that mean in the real world, I suppose? But ACS is just, it's as a platform, like H said, like CPaaS, it's now, with it being opened up even more, it's just a huge toolkit to be able to achieve more easily in a certified environment that has service levels that are public. So in terms of service delivery.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that brings us quite nicely on to the next question that you kind of posed there, Chris, is what impact do you think this will have on the wider Teams CCaaS market? As we've mentioned, there are Connect vendors out there, there's Extend vendors like us there, there's other vendors which are integrating into Teams, but maybe Teams isn't their sole kind of priority. So what impact do you think this will have on the wider Teams and CCaaS market?
I think it's going to be significant. Like, we've all waited for the power model, and so we get another flavor essentially that comes along. So that brings huge opportunities, but as I just said, it also brings a requirement for partners to excel really in being able to find the best solution for their customer. And I think I'm right in saying the partners that we represent, we are experts in telephony and complex contact center, so we understand the kind of options that they have. So there's native offerings now, isn't there? So we've got, and I know Zach's absolutely all over the Teams CCaaS app. We've also got the ISV offerings in the marketplace that have been there since the Connect model and that certification program that came along. And more recently, like the GA last July, we've got a native enterprise, I'm going to call it, but not necessarily, offering in terms of the Dynamics 365 contact center. So with this offering, just thinking about the ISV world, I suppose for customers, it's finding, I think, the right partner to work with who understands all of those different technology stacks and certification models, rather than, you know, just being a partner who just pushes one product because that's all they understand and know and want to sell, and it's very commercial driven. I think it's really important to have that balance, almost an agnostic partner who looks at your requirements, looks at your challenges, your pain points, you know, that you have with existing maybe legacy telephony and legacy contact center, and can find the right model to fit based on the use cases. So I think it's going to create, one, a challenge for partners, but two, out of that, you know, great opportunities. And in the same way, for customers, it gives them another option now within the kind of ecosystem as to which solution fits best for them, rather than, you know, if we step back in time, we were just connecting with bits of string, really. Kind of contact centers, I'm going back sort of 10 years now, thinking about Link and Skype in those early days. So I think also there's you know, the next 2 or 3 years, I think as a marketplace we all work in, we're going to see changes with those ISVs and offerings. Talking holistically, I think we'll see the marketplace shrink in terms of those vendors. I think there will be those who succeed, are agile and really push ahead. And I think just others won't see the success because maybe they do rest on their laurels a little bit. So I think it's really important, you know, and we all work for partners, like I say, who are experts in this space, to find the right partner who can really understand how to transform what you do now, not just lift and shift. It's not a lift and shift marketplace. It shouldn't be, really. We want to try and digital transformation. I don't really like the phrase, but yeah, whatever that means, is we want to take them from what they're doing now to like a really modernized solution that drives efficiency for that business in terms of time and cost saving. So yeah, I think it's going to be, you know, from now, when we go to GA for it, which we're still waiting. I don't think we know the month on that. I certainly don't. I know it's summer they're talking about, but without getting into specific dates, I think for the rest of this year and into next year, it's going to make things really interesting. A lot of customers probably did tactical CCaaS during COVID. So it was kind of, you know, a necessity for us to move people really quickly to phone system and to CCaaS, and, you know, CCaaS, so cloud-based contact center, get them off on premise or whatever, just didn't enable remote working. But for a lot of those customers, I think we're probably now 3 or 4 years down the line. So they're probably thinking about what's next. And another trigger for that is, say it again, AI, which is everywhere. So this opens up great possibilities.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned, Chris, there that obviously this is a bit of a journey, and I think the tendency when some of these technology releases come out is to think, okay, this is going to be the answer to my prayers. This is suddenly going to give vendors AI, whatever that means,
magic bullet,
solve everything. But I think the reality is, as we know from these new technologies, that these technologies take a bit of time to mature. The feature, it obviously still requires the features to be developed into a full enterprise scalable solution. So kind of given that, I don't know, H or Zach, you got any thoughts on if you were kind of in the customer's shoes in 2025, given that this is a new technology, what would your kind of strategy be if you were a customer looking to buy a contact center solution or a Teams integrated contact center solution in 2025?
I could probably jump in. First thing I would do, and please don't kick me from the call, Ollie, is have a look at the native features. You know, have a look at those Teams native features and see what, you know, see if that's something that you can. You know, we've got things like the Queues app, which has come out, but you'll probably find quite quickly that there'll be certain features and functionalities that it's not built for and it won't be able to do. So go out and have a look at the certified partners out there. You know, the connect extend model, look at your feature set and what you want to achieve with your CCaaS, and see which type of model fits. But there's also the unique opportunity to mix and match some of those as well. So let's say like the extend model with Nimbus and Luware. It's not an all or nothing, between these models. If you have already deployed an extend contact center, but then you look at some of those AI features or some of those features that are in the power, and you want to turn that on for one queue, that's something that's going to be available to you, and that's definitely something that I would look at as a strategy rather than going gung-ho all into one.
Yeah, absolutely. H, I don't know if you've got anything to add on that.
So I tend to I agree with Chris as well, and everything that Zach said. I think, as you mentioned, what we're seeing is that there's a lot of demand for things like omni-channel, for AI integrations, and now's not necessarily the time that is right potentially for some of those, because those features are still maturing. So having a partner that can help you roadmap that journey, understand your business requirements and what your challenges are, is absolutely critical. More so than I think in terms of the actual CCaaS solutions themselves, because they're the ones that are really going to help you to drive forward and get the most out of what you're doing, provide that good customer experience, and also make the cost savings that are really sort of prevalent in the economy at the moment. So in terms of features and functionality, it's all about, I think, anything that's going to resolve your business challenges, but the way you do it, I think, has to be through a partner.
Yeah, I see. That's why obviously we have that channel first strategy. I think that's why your respective companies are so important to Luware's growth. But it's a technology that I think is going to future proof the customer, because of that those really cool capabilities that are now possible and that will be available in the products down the line. But as you mentioned, Zach, I think it's not a one size fits all, right? If you go to a full power model tomorrow, you're probably going to find a lot is lacking, right? And you might regret that. So being able to do that at your own pace, in phases, I think is super important. And that's the message that we want to push out to customers, is that if they choose Nimbus, they can choose Nimbus Extend, which is what the majority of customers, I think, still will be choosing in 2025. But then they can turn on Nimbus Power with Azure Communication Services where it makes sense to in those specific use cases. So I think that's quite a nice place to finish. Really appreciate your views. It's a very exciting space to be in at the moment, and I think we're only a week in. I think it was only made the announcement last Monday, so I'm sure there'll be a lot more to kind of discuss in the coming months. But I appreciate your time, guys. Thanks very much for joining.